but also to say, okay, what does it mean for...
Hello and welcome, I'm Ellie Richardson and you are watching The World Report on NewsX World. Let's take a look at the top headlines of this hour. Ghislaine Maxwell refused to answer the US House Oversight Committee, invoking the Fifth Amendment. Lawmakers say both parties criticised the move, as Democrats allege she seeks clemency and her lawyer says she'll testify only with a pardon. King Charles III says he will support police if asked over claims Prince Andrew shared sensitive material with Jeffrey Epstein. Buckingham Palace says the King is concerned by newly reviewed Epstein files. The United States and Armenia have agreed to cooperate on civil nuclear energy, deepening ties. The move follows a US-brokered South Caucasus peace deal, with Washington seeking to draw Yerevan closer. The United States has issued new guidelines urging US-flagged ships to avoid Iran's waters in the Strait of Hormuz, aimed at raising tensions. The advisory also warns against Iranian forces boarding American vessels. The White House opposes Israel annexing the West Bank, saying stability is vital to regional security. It stopped short of condemning new measures or saying if concerns were raised with Israel's government. Venezuela's parliament has delayed a vote on a proposed amnesty law, moving the session to Thursday. The move comes amid US pressure to free political prisoners following Maduro ouster. Police arrested 27 people as clashes erupted while officers cleared protests against Israeli President Isaac Herzog's visit in Sydney. Protesters allege pepper spray misuse as PM Anthony Albanese urged calm ahead of the new rally. Mexican authorities recovered 10 bodies during the search for workers kidnapped from a Canadian-owned mine in Sonora State. Officials say 5 victims are identified so far, while forensic teams work to confirm the others. And for your top story this hour, Britain's Prince William is meeting Saudi Arabia's de facto leader, Crown Prince Mohammed bin Salman, kicking off a visit aimed at deepening economic cooperation, but overshadowed by his disgraced uncle Andrew's links to Jeffrey Epstein. It is William's first official trip to Saudi Arabia, and ahead of his arrival in Riyadh, Kensington Palace broke years of silence over Andrew's links to the late US convicted sex offender by saying William and his wife Catherine were deeply concerned by the continuing revelations. The short statement, which did not directly reference the ex-Prince Andrew, came as the monarchy faces renewed pressure over allegations stemming from the tarnished royal ties to Epstein. We are now being joined by Ambassador Suresh Goel, who's a former Indian diplomat, joining us from New Delhi. Thank you so much for joining us here today on NewsX World. How does the timing of Prince William's visit come amid renewed focus on the Epstein files affect its diplomatic impact?
Very difficult to say, really. I will just, because the fact is that Epstein scandal has actually pervaded practically the whole global international politics, with the kind of connections he made and the kind of inroads through whatever kind of network he had developed. It had actually crossed many countries and lots of top political leadership as well as constitutional leadership. Prince Andrew's case is very well known. It has been already agreed to. And the damage of what Prince Andrew is actually now also affecting the government in the UK, with Lord Mendelssohn's appointment as ambassador to Washington. Therefore, I'm sure Prince William's on the visit, he may have to answer, but more than likely, and this is just my hunch really, Saudi Arabia will not be talking about the issues in a kind of a sense of to impact on the relationship between the two countries, which is what basically Prince Williams will be doing as a constitutional authority belonging to the monarch's family. But they may just talk about the Epstein in a very informal manner across the table as a kind of a conversation without making it part of the formal agenda. And therefore, while Prince Williams will talk about it, will explain the kind of role that Prince had played and how it impacted on King Charles. Now, I don't think that it is really going to weigh so heavily in the minds of the two people, two princes, when they talk to each other.
And what strategic interests lie behind deepening UK-Saudi relations today beyond ceremonial symbolism?
I think a lot, really, because Saudi Arabia, with the role it is playing in the Middle East, and also in terms of the European security architecture, please do, if you recall that several meetings between the Ukraine and Russian Federation have taken place in Oman as a part in the Gulf area, and Saudi Arabia has very good connections with Oman. Saudi Arabia would be very interested in what is impacting the European security, and also in terms of what is happening in the Middle East. They are very Saudi Arabia and UAE conflict has grown actually even within Yemen, Houthis. So Saudi Arabia will have a deep interest in seeing what UK is thinking about the developments, both in terms of Ukraine and Europe, and also in terms of the whole global politics, the impact of Trump's tariff policies, impact of what Trump decisions are. Therefore, Saudi Arabia and UK will be talking about those global politics and impact on the energy security.
And people are saying this visit is shadowed by the Epstein files. Do you think the shadow of it can highlight broader challenges in separating personal reputations from state-level engagements?
My sense is that they will not allow the shadow of Epstein scandal to impact on the bilateral relations. It will be a passing shadow, there will be a conversation piece, etc., but it will not be serious part of agenda, because the relationship between Saudi Arabia and UK, given the present context of the European security and the energy security, will be far, far too important than to be affected by this.
And is the focus on the scandal distracting from substantive issues like security, trade, or regional cooperation that the visit aims to address?
No, I again say that I don't think it will seriously impact on the defense, the security relationship between the two countries. No.
And what are we expecting to see after this visit concludes?
That is something which is difficult to answer. I think this visit is going to lay the groundwork for further conversations. I don't expect that there will be immediate results, but it is preparing the background for further developments in terms of the bilateral relationship.
Thank you so much,
Thank you.
Suresh, for joining us here today on NewsX World. Political parties in Venezuela have called for the immediate release of opposition leader Juan Pablo Guanapa after he was rearrested just hours after being freed from prison on Sunday. Supporters say that his detention undermines recent political prisoner releases. Let's listen in.
No es posible que ellos hayan emitido una boleta de excarcelación que solamente decía 2 condiciones, pero ellos hoy están alegando otras cosas. Una vez más queda en evidencia que el régimen no tiene una voluntad política realmente de avanzar y de que logremos una democracia plena y lograr una libertad absoluta de todos los presos políticos, que hay que dejar claro que no han cometido ningún delito, solamente pensar.
Meanwhile, relatives and activists have expressed deep disappointment after talks in the National Venezuelan Assembly to approve further amnesty for political prisoners were postponed. The delay has dashed hopes that hundreds more could be freed, leaving families frustrated and mistrustful of official promises. Let's listen in to some of their reactions.
Y hoy enterarme que la pospusieron, la suspendieron, no sé, ya me siento muy mal. Es una burla para los sentimientos de las personas que estamos acá, los familiares, la espera tan larga. Me siento muy decepcionada, la verdad.
Todo el mundo habla de la ley de amnistía y ayer hubo excarcelaciones sin que la ley esté aprobada. Es decir, que no hace falta la ley para hacer excarcelaciones de gente inocente.
Moreover, in a related development, freed political prisoners marched in protest shortly after their release in Caracas, calling for the complete and unconditional liberation of all detained opposition figures. Let's listen in to one such human rights activist who had been detained since his arrest in December 2024.
Creo que tengo una expectativa muy alta de cómo los venezolanos han perdido el miedo y cómo lo van a seguir perdiendo, porque ahorita necesitamos más que nunca desobedecer a quienes están en el poder, necesitamos más que nunca organizarnos y avanzar para poder arrancarles el poder y tener una elección general que nos lleve a tener autoridades que genuinamente representen la soberanía popular.
We are now being joined by Ambassador Vishwanathan, who's a former ambassador to Venezuela. Thank you so much for joining us here today. What does the rearrest of the opposition leader shortly after his release say about the government's commitment to political reform and reconciliation?
The Venezuelan government would do this release and manage the transition process gradually with full control. Okay, they wouldn't like suddenly to open up everything and have a serious problem of serious protests and agitations at the moment. You remember even what Trump says. He says first stabilization, then recovery, and then only transition. So they're also following the same path as Trump says.
And how might the postponement of the amnesty talks affect trust between Venezuela's ruling authorities and the opposition, as well as public confidence in the possibility of genuine change?
Of course, there is absolutely no trust between the opposition and the government. The opposition believes in Trump, and they don't give space for the government and accommodate them and compromise with them and reach a mutually agreeable settlement. They are using Trump to show his guns at their head and try and get concessions. This is not a viable or sustainable formula for transition or to democracy. Eventually, the opposition and the government have to work together and do a deal directly between themselves. It is wrong on the part of the opposition to use Trump at every opportunity to bully and intimidate the government. And the government would, of course, react and manage in a way to control this.
What prompted the rearrest of Juan Pablo, and how does this affect the opposition strategy moving forward?
Apparently, he had violated the conditions of release by making some public statement or something which the government did not like. Anyway, this kind of thing, push and pull, will go on. And it's not going to open up suddenly and become a free and open society tomorrow. No, it will take another at least 3 years.
And can the growing protests in Venezuela bring about any change in the government's stance on opposition leaders and political freedom?
No, absolutely no. Opposition had been protesting for over a decade. The regime is very well entrenched and strong, and a lot of people have emigrated, and the other people, they have fear, so they have used up all their energy in so many protests in the past, and then the opposition had been misleading the people, saying that the regime would go tomorrow. It has happened. So people are also tired and exhausted. So I don't think there would be any serious and dangerous protest to overthrow the regime internally or bring about a change. No, it's not going to happen.
And how effective can the proposed amnesty law be in addressing political grievances if opposition parties remain sceptical and key leaders are still targeted?
The Venezuelans are learning from Trump. You see what Trump does? Can anyone negotiate with him? Does anyone have trust with him? And he's still getting away with it. So they think that if he can get away with it in the open, large democracy in the United States, it's a piece of cake for them to do that.
And in a broader human rights context, how should international actors respond to mixed signals of prisoner releases and subsequent arrests when evaluating Venezuela's political trajectory?
The international community should advise the opposition leaders that it is an internal domestic issue. They have to sort it out with the regime instead of going to United States. That's what happened in Brazil, Argentina, Chile, Uruguay, Paraguay, where they had much more brutal dictatorships. They didn't go to America. In fact, America was supporting those dictatorships. So the people, they struggled, and then finally they negotiated and got a deal, and they gave amnesty to them. So in this case, the opposition, they are not talking about amnesty and a deal for the rulers, because they are the American government has announced bounties, like the vice president has bounty of $25 million, and the chief of armed forces has $15 million. Still over $100 million of bounties are on the heads of these people. So why don't this opposition go to Americans and say that please remove these bounties and stop the sanction? Then we will deal with this government and we will negotiate with them directly. That is the only way.
Thank you. Don't go too far, as we will be back with you very shortly.
Okay.
Havana streets are eerily quiet as emergency measures kicked in to conserve Cuba's fast dwindling fuel stocks under economic pressure from US President Donald Trump. The oil supply in a US stranglehold as the communist government has shuttered universities, reduced school hours and the work week, and slashed public transport as it limited fuel sales. Meanwhile, some locals have reacted. Let's listen in to what they had to say.
Las medidas, te podría decir sin palabras, porque no nos remedian el problema. Quizás a algunos les resuelvan, pero no nos remedia el problema a el % mayor de los cubanos que tenemos que hacer trámites, que tenemos inclusive que ir a trabajar.
No puedo ahora mismo moverme. Tengo familia en la provincia, tengo viaje que hacer, todo está cancelado, no hay a dónde, no hay nada. Estás paralizado aquí. Y es más la impotencia por el qué va a pasar, la incertidumbre, que no la...
Las medidas lo que me generan es inseguridad respecto a qué va a pasar con mi semestre universitario, cómo va a ser la situación de evaluaciones semipresencialidad mediante la plataforma EBEA, va a funcionar de verdad. En muchos estudiantes que viven en pueblos un poco recógnitos, que nunca tienen corriente, y si no tienen corriente no tienen conexión.
We are now being joined again by Ambassador Vishwanathan. Thank you for joining us back here on NewsX World. How much of Cuba's fuel crisis is due to US pressure and how much is due to Cuba's own economic problems?
Well, primarily it is the responsibility of the United States, which had imposed sanctions for the last 7 decades. And they had so many assassination attempts and conspiracies and invasions and dirty tricks by CIA. Cuba has survived all these. But now they have reached a stage where it's going to be very, very extremely difficult for them to survive the latest strangulation, because United States has found that the economic warfare could be deadlier than bombing the country or hitting with missiles. Now they have blockaded Cuba, and they do not allow oil supplies to Cuba, and they have threatened sanctions on anyone supplying directly or indirectly. Earlier, Venezuela was supplying, not only supplying oil, but they were giving it free and at subsidized rates. Mexico was supplying some at, again, subsidized rates. But now Mexico has halted its supply. There was a little bit from Russia and a little from Algeria, but insignificant. But in any case, those countries wouldn't like to risk US sanctions by supplying anything. So now Cuba is in a desperate situation. Their stocks will not last for more than 2 weeks. And their own production of oil is only about 40,000 barrels per day. But they need 70,000 barrels more. And so the economy is going to collapse, and it's going to be a serious, serious problem.
And we heard that the government have put on emergency measures of reducing the work week, reducing school hours, shutting universities. Are these measures helping people, or are they making daily life harder?
Of course, it's making daily life harder, and it's going to be much more hard in the coming days and weeks.
And do US sanctions hurt the Cuban government, or mainly ordinary citizens?
It hurts the citizens, it hurts the government, it hurts the country, and it hurts the sentiments of the world, because the US sanctions are absolutely illegal. If they don't like Cuba, they can stop trading with them. Why do they make the whole world to stop business with Cuba? What authority? It is absolutely illegal, immoral, unethical.
Thank you so much for joining us here today on NewsX World. Palestinian officials have condemned Israel's recent approval of measures that would deepen its control over the West Bank, including the expansion of settlements and transferring authority for building permits to Israeli authorities in Palestinian areas such as Hebron. Hebron Deputy Mayor Asma al-Sharbati warns that this move could marginalise Palestinian institutions in the West Bank and accelerate settlement expansions. Meanwhile, the governor of Hebron, Khalad Dudin, called for an international action, urging UNESCO to uphold its role in protecting Palestinian heritage, particularly the Ibrahimi Mosque, which is registered as a World Heritage Site. Let's listen in to what the governor had to say.
لذلك مطلوب تحرك دولي، مطلوب منظمة اليونسكو التي سجلت الحرم الإبراهيمي والبلدة القديمة على لائحة التراث العالمي بأنها فلسطينية خالصة، أن يقوموا بدورهم. موقف العالم اليوم موقف خجول من إطلاق مصطلح إرهاب على المستوطنين الذين يقومون بكل الموبقات على أبناء شعبنا في كافة أنحاء الوطن.
Alphabet's self-driving unit Waymo says it has gone fully autonomous in Nashville, Tennessee, marking a major expansion as the robot taxi race intensifies in the United States. The move follows a September announcement by Waymo and Lyft to offer deliverless cab rides in the city, making Nashville the first commercial deployment of Waymo vehicles on Lyft's network. Waymo remains the leader in the US autonomous vehicle market, with more than 2,500 driverless cars operating across cities including San Francisco, Los Angeles, Phoenix, Austin, and Atlanta. Competition is growing, with Tesla making robot taxis a core priority as it shifts focus from electric vehicles. Last week, Waymo raised $16 billion in funding, valuing the company at $126 billion, highlighting strong investor confidence in autonomous technology. That's all we have time for this hour. Keep watching NewsX World for more news updates from around the world.